Um, my message today is about Daniel. My class this semester seemed it was really long. It was on Daniel, but my professor got sick twice throughout my semester. They got kicked back, and I listened to my classes over and over and over again. So I think the first time it was like 2 weeks he was sick, and the second time was like 6 weeks. But I continued to listen to all of my messages over and over, or all of my classes over and over. So I've listened to a lot about Daniel. So I figured I'd write a message about Daniel. And I could have made it very, very long, because a whole semester just learning about Daniel, that's a lot of information, but I kept it within the proper parameters. So, but the title of the message is Daniel in the Lion's Den. Daniel went through a lot, as you all know, through his time. The whole book is about all the trials that he faced, but you can't share them all. But in Daniel chapter 6, Darius, the new king of Babylon, picked 120 governors to help him rule the kingdom. Now that's a lot of that. That can give you an idea how big his kingdom was when he had 120 governors. Then he put 3 people in charge of them, and one of them was Daniel. King Darius really respected Daniel and was planning to put him in charge over the whole kingdom. Now there's a lot to just that right there. Daniel being allowed to be made a governor. There's a lot to that right now that just too much to share, so I'll just go on with the lion's den here. But the other governors did not like this and wanted to find something wrong with Daniel. They wanted to make him look bad in the eyes of King Darius. Now the other governors didn't like Daniel because he was from a foreign land, and that made him look bad. He was one of the top 3 governors, but he was from a foreign land. Top 3, 120, possibly going to be put in charge of all of them, and he was from a foreign land, and so they didn't like that. He was a foreigner from a foreign land, but he followed a different God, a God that the other governors didn't follow. Daniel followed the one true God. That's how he was able to get to where he was in such high standing, because of God. Has this ever happened to you? Just like with Daniel, the governors didn't like him. Have you ever had somebody that didn't like you? Have you ever had people talk bad about you because they were trying to make you look bad? They didn't like you and they wanted you to look bad. Sometimes they can be lying. Sometimes people will make something up, but sometimes they're telling the truth. Sometimes you did something wrong, and they'll take what you did and make you look bad. But either way, they are using it to make you feel bad and to make themselves look better. That's what they want to do. They want to make themselves look bad. It doesn't really matter what you do. They just want to make you look bad. They want to make themselves feel better. That's what's happening to Daniel here in this portion of Scripture with the lion's den. The governors couldn't find anything wrong with Daniel, so they decided to make something up. And when you're following God, sometimes it's hard to point out something bad in you, so people will make stuff up. Or even if you're not following God, people will just make stuff up. They decided to make up a law that says everyone must pray only to King Darius and no one else. You can only pray to the king. They knew that Daniel openly prayed to God 3 times a day, every day, so they knew they could catch him. They had King Darius sign the law, and then when Daniel prayed to God, he had to be arrested. He broke the law, he had to be arrested. King Darius tried to find a way around the law, but eventually sentenced Daniel to the lion's den. Before leaving, King Darius told Daniel that he hoped his God would save him from the lions. So King Darius knew of Daniel's God, and he had hoped that he would save him from the lions. King Darius had begun to believe in the God that Daniel believed in because God had used Daniel in mighty ways that couldn't be explained other than through the great power of Daniel's God. How can you not believe in something that has power like that, like with Daniel here. If you've heard this story before, you know that God did save Daniel from the lion's den. He shut the lions' mouths so that they would not eat him. King Darius was relieved to find Daniel safe from harm the next morning, but he punished those who tried to harm Daniel, and then he issued a decree in Daniel chapter 6, verses 26 and 27. Verse 26 says, I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. Because of this, because of what's going on here, because of them trying to come against Daniel, the king is making a decree that everyone must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. I imagine they probably would make the lions hungry, so that when you were in there, they were going to eat you up. That's the whole punishment. That's what it was for, to be put in a lion's den to be eaten. So I'm sure they made them hungry. So Daniel, proving himself over and over and over again, the king eventually would have to say, we got to follow Daniel's God. The lions, he was in a lion's den and didn't get eaten up. There's something going on here. Not only did God protect Daniel, but he also convinced the king and the entire kingdom should obey God. God used Daniel in a big way to affect King Darius and the entire kingdom. But I want to go back to just a minute to the part where the other governors were plotting again. I need to slow down. I keep stuttering. I'm talking too fast here. Talking faster than my brain will go. Or my brain is going faster than my mouth will go. But anyhow, let me start that over. But I want to go back just a minute to the part where the other governors were plotting against Daniel. Things like this still happen today, don't they? People will plot against you. Sometimes there are people in our lives that just seem to always want to give us a hard time. When I was younger and not yet living the way I should, sometimes people would give me a hard time and I would give them a hard time back. I always did. Even when I was young, I was little, but I was stupid. I would always give people a hard time back. I would lose my temper and make it clear to them that I wasn't going to back down. Last Sunday I said that my dad was a rough and tough kind of dad. That's the way he raised us, to not take anything. But after choosing to have a relationship with God and live my life according to Him, people didn't magically all become nicer around me or to me. In some ways, once you're a Christian, you recognize even more the lack of compassion in others. Sometimes you want to lose your temper even more because you can see it gets under your skin sometimes to see somebody picking on somebody else. You just see the lack of compassion in people. The difference is now, I know that God is fighting my battles for me. Like I said, my favorite verse is 2 Kings. Elijah asked God to open the eyes of his servants, and he saw all of God's army around him. You don't have to fight your own battles. You just need to pray to God, and His army is there to fight for you. He doesn't need to defend. He doesn't need me to defend myself or defend Him. God doesn't need me to defend myself or Him. He just needs me to witness to others and to extend grace and kindness to people, and He will handle the rest. Daniel did not have to fight. I mean physically fight. We always have a battle within. Satan's always against us, but Daniel didn't have to physically fight in order to be saved. He only had to trust in God to take care of him. Sometimes we just need to let God handle what is going on around us. If we take the steps to live our life with Him, He will get us through anything that is going on in our life right now and anything that may happen in the future. You get your life right with God, and He will take care of you. Now, I know I've been talking about Daniel a lot this morning, but I want to share a little bit here about a story that Amber found. You may have heard it, but it's about a guy named Michael Packard. He was 45 feet deep on the coastal waters of Provincetown, Massachusetts, on Friday, June 11th. So this just happened. He was scuba diving when he was suddenly gulped inside the mouth of an enormous marine animal. That would be scary. We was talking to Amber's sister-in-law, the girl that has the two little twins. She says she'll swim, do anything, but if she knows there's something in the water, she wants out right now. And this guy was in the mouth of an enormous marine animal. All of a sudden, he felt this huge bump, and everything went dark. At first, he thought he had been attacked by a shark, as great whites frequent the area, but he soon realized he couldn't feel any teeth. Now, that's got to be something when you're feeling for teeth. You know you're in trouble when you're feeling for teeth. He then realized he was in a whale's mouth, and the whale was trying to swallow him. He thought to himself, okay, this is it, I'm going to die. You don't feel teeth, but you feel something trying to swallow you. That's just as scary. Packard was lucky that he was grabbed by a baleen whale. Despite being one of the largest whale species, growing up to 60 feet long and weighing an impressive 40 tons, the school bus-sized giant whale dined on tiny sea creatures such as small fish, krill, and plankton, meaning their throats are usually only 4 to 8 inches wide. Talk about God being on your side. Being in something that's the size of a school bus, but its throat is only about 8 inches wide. You didn't feel teeth. You feel like you're being swallowed, but when you realize that the whale can't swallow you, you might start to think, okay, I think I can get out of this. No one gobbled up by a humpback could end up in the beast's stomach, but the creature's 4-ton tongue was enough to crush him. So just the weight of the whale's tongue could have crushed him. But luckily, he was on top of his tongue. That's a weird sentence to say. To be lucky you're on top of something's tongue. That's not lucky. He estimated that he remained trapped inside the mouth for about 30 seconds, and he was still able to breathe through his scuba respirator. But then the whale surfaced, shook his head, and spat him out. Could you imagine being in a whale's mouth, the panic and the fear you would feel, knowing you probably were not going to survive? Whether you felt teeth or not, being in the mouth of something means it's trying to eat you, or bite you, or harm you in some way. Possibly this is the same kind of fear that Daniel felt going into the lion's den, but God protected him in the same way. God is in the business of protecting us from things like that. We need to have faith in that. That guy missed my brother when he shot. He said he was pretty close. My brother is saying he was probably a pretty bad shot. Amber and I both are pretty convinced, no, God didn't want you to die right there. At a close range, you could be a bad shot. You're still going to hit your target. God just didn't want him to die. Just like Daniel and just like this man here in the mouth of a whale. Sometimes situations in our lives seem so bad when we're in the middle of it. We feel like we're the ones stuck in the lion's den or in the whale's mouth. But we also sometimes don't see that there is terrible things we are going through. We are going through is part of the path that leads us to great things. So sometimes we are in trouble, But sometimes that's where God wants us to be, because he's teaching you something through that trouble. He's leading you to something great, but you need to see something in those troubled times. Michael Packard was scared in the whale's mouth. The situation seemed deadly. Worst case scenario, being inside the mouth of the animal that can eat you is about as bad as it gets. That is a worst case scenario, being in the mouth of an animal. But the whale didn't have the ability to swallow him up, because it wasn't made to eat something of that size. That's something that God, for some reason, wanted him to go through, knowing God knew that the animal couldn't eat him, couldn't swallow him. But Daniel must have been so afraid to be thrown into the lion's den. Even though he trusted God to take care of him, he had to still be worried that the lions would swallow him up. When you feel like that, when you feel like we're in a dark place that we can't get out of, we need to remember that God will not keep us there. The darkness doesn't have the ability to swallow us up if we let God have control of our lives. Darkness can't have you if God has you. The darkness doesn't have the ability to swallow up the light. God is light. Everywhere God goes, he takes his light. So if you have God, you have the light of God, and evil can't swallow you up. It's kind of a hard sentence, a hard thing to realize, that you're in trouble sometimes, and you feel bad. You're like, yeah, but I believe in God. I believe. Why am I going through this trouble? Trouble or trials lead you to great things if you allow yourself to learn from these things. You will still have trials, but with God's light, he will help you see a way out. Light helps you see. God's light will help you see a way out. I have mentioned before that throughout the first part of my life, I didn't live the way that I do now. I'm sure it's hard to imagine your pastor living any other way, but I just didn't get serious about God until I went through some really hard times. Sometimes we do have to go through hard times to get serious about life and to get serious about God. Through mistakes I made and other things that happened, I learned to trust him. I let him lead me. If you would have told me back then that I would be here preaching to you, married to Amber, living this life God has blessed us with, I wouldn't have believed you. I really wouldn't have. You know, a lot of people that are starting to go to church or in the middle of trouble, you might tell them, life will be good for you someday. No, it ain't. It's not going to be good for me. It happens. Trust me. I'm actually living proof of that. Back then, I didn't know what to do or what to think, but I just needed someone to come alongside me and encourage me and point me towards Jesus. My pastor at the time did that. Amber's dad did that. Amber did that. Friends, family, and church did that. They came alongside me. That's why it's very important for me as a pastor and us as a church to come alongside people and love them, show them compassion, encouragement, and kindness. We need to show them how important it is to be faithful like Daniel. That's why these stories in the Bible are here. We learn faithfulness from people like Daniel. There's so many things, but I'm just going to concentrate on the word faithfulness from Daniel. We need to read our Bible because we learn from them. We can associate these things to our lives. Look how much God blessed Daniel. Because of Daniel's faith, because he trusted in God and did what was right, the king of the entire kingdom saw how good and powerful God is and how much he takes care of those who glorify him. There are always people in our lives that will come and go that may hurt us or just aren't very nice to us, but they will come and go. Many people like that will come and go. Some even plot to try to make us mess up so they can get something they want. But if we are putting our trust in him, if we are putting our trust in God, he will take care of us. He will carry us through any trials that this world has to offer. All we have to do is ask him to do that for us. Just ask him to do those things for you. Like I've talked before, you might not see an answer to a prayer ever, but he does answer your prayer. And like I've said before, if the answer to your prayer is no, if he tells you no, he has something greater than what you're praying for. Just look for that. If he says no, if you want this and he says no, you're not getting it, then look for what he has, because it's got to be better than what you're asking for. Now, Daniel was roughly 15 to 20 years old when he was taken. Yes, I say taken from his home. 15 to 20 years old when he was taken. Jerusalem had been taken over by Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel had been carried away to a foreign country. Of course, other people was with him, including 3 of his friends, but they were all in a foreign land with a new set of rules. What do you do when life gets all out of order? What do you do when life gets tough and it seems as though you're all alone even when you're surrounded by people? Joseph was surrounded by his brothers when they threw him in a pit. He was surrounded by his brothers when his brothers took him out of that pit and then sold him into slavery. Sometimes we can be surrounded by others and still be alone. What do you do? What do you do when life gets all out of order? You have faith in God. Even when you're surrounded by other people, you have faith in God. That's what you do. Daniel faced many trials while being held captive. I'm sure, just like while he was in the lion's den, he was scared several different times throughout his time of being captive. There's a lot in it's a short chapter, really, or a short book, but there's a lot in Daniel, a lot that he suffered. He was thrown into a fiery furnace that was made so hot that the guards near were all burned up just by being close to the fire. The guards that took Daniel to throw him into the fire died just throwing him into the fire because it was so hot. But Daniel and his 3 friends survived. They survived that fire. 4 young men went into the fire, but 5 figures were seen in the flames. 4 went in, 5 were seen. Even in the middle of the fire, God will not leave you alone. You can be in the middle of all of that stuff, all of the stuff that life can throw at you. You can be in the middle of it. You can be surrounded by people, and God will be there with you. Life might seem tough at times, but if you believe in God and have faith, he will never leave you or forsake you. And as a church body, if one of us is struggling with something, then all of us are struggling. We are like Daniel and his friends. They went into the fire with him. We are all together in a fire. Whatever troubles you're going through, we are all with you. But God is there too. As your pastor, I would like to say right now that if any of you need me to struggle with you through anything that life throws at you, I'm right here. I'll stand in the fire with you. I figured I would share a little bit of maybe you guys can come and stand along beside me. This week has been my finals week. We worked a lot of overtime at work. I've been trying to do my finals, and I didn't get my finals done. But the pastor or the president of the school called because I've gotten all A's so far. He called and wanted to congratulate me. I had never talked to him, just wanted to, tell me good job or whatever. And I called to, he left a message. I didn't get to talk to him, but I called the school back and my professor answered. And I thought, I don't got my finals done, and my professor answers the phone, and so nice, just told me, don't worry about it. He puts a limit on when we're allowed to get our finals done because he doesn't want us to take all summer. He's got to grade them all. He doesn't want his summer spent grading finals. But he told me, he's like, don't worry about it, take your time. I was like, whew. I was worried, but I'm still worried about getting another A. I'm so worried about getting an A that I really worried myself over it. I've gotten straight A's so far. I want people to know that I know this, that I'm trying my hardest to do a good job up here. Yeah, that's something that I need help with. I don't have to get an A. I don't need the approval of an A. I just need to trust God, just like Daniel did. That's something that you can come alongside me and help me not worry about an A so much. But I just wanted to say that we won't be alone, though, ever. Jesus will be right there with us. Even when we're together, Jesus will be with us. Thank you.